I want to tell you a story. It's an old story, one of the oldest we have. It's a story that has haunted our collective imagination for centuries, whispered around fires and immortalized in books and in film. It is the story of the vampire. He is a creature of shadow, of aristocracy, of a terrible and an irresistible charisma. He is the undead, the count in his decaying castle, a figure of a dark and a tragic and a predatory romance. And his defining characteristic is his hunger. He is a creature who has no life of his own, and so he must, with a terrible and a constant necessity, feed on the lifeblood of the living. He doesn't just kill you, he drains you. He leaves you pale, he leaves you weak, he leaves you an empty and a hollow version of the person you once were. It is a brilliant and a terrifying piece of folklore. But the most important, the most psychologically profound, and the most often overlooked part of the entire vampire myth is this: the vampire cannot enter your home unless you invite him in. He can stand at your threshold, charismatic and alluring. He can beg, he can plead, he can charm. But he has no power to cross the line from his world into yours, unless you, the victim, grant him the permission. The power, in the end, is not with the monster. It is with the one who holds the key to the door. I used to think this was just a clever, dramatic device, a strange little rule in a gothic ghost story. But the longer I live, the more I have come to believe that this myth is true. In fact, I believe it is the most accurate and the most devastatingly precise diagnosis of a very real and a very modern kind of suffering. Because vampires are real. They just don't feed on your blood. They feed on your energy. They feed on your attention, on your patience, on your joy, on your time. You know this feeling. I know it with a painful and an almost shameful intimacy. It is the feeling of an invisible drain. It's the phone call you get from a certain friend, a friend you love, but whose name on the screen makes your heart sink. And after 20 minutes of listening to the same unchanging and circular drama of their life, you hang up and you feel hollowed out. You feel exhausted. It's the family dinner, a dinner where nothing bad even happens. No one shouts, but you leave the table feeling like you've just run a marathon, like you've been bled dry by 1,000 tiny passive-aggressive paper cuts. It's the partner or the colleague or the parent who lives in a constant and a low-grade state of crisis, a crisis that you, and only you, seem to be responsible for managing. We call these people energy vampires, and it is a perfect name, for they are like the Count Dracula of the old story, charismatic, they are compelling, and they are, on a deep and a fundamental level, starving. They have no inner light of their own, and so they must feed on yours. And for years, this was the story that I told myself. It was a simple and an easy and a very comforting story, a story of victims and of villains, a story that allowed me to feel a kind of a quiet and a weary moral superiority. I was the giver, the doer, the good one. And they were the takers, the drainers, the vampires. I was the victim. But if we are to be truly honest with ourselves, if we are to have the courage to stop being the victim and to start being free, we have to ask the harder question. We have to look at the old and wise and terrible truth of the myth. The vampire is not the real problem. The problem is the invitation. The real mystery isn't why they feed. The real mystery is why we keep letting them in. Why do we, time and time again, stand at the open door of our own soul and willingly, if unconsciously, invite the vampire to cross the threshold and to feast? Why do you keep that friend on the phone? Why do you keep going to that family dinner? Why do you keep taking responsibility for another person's chaos? This is the question that can set us free, because this journey is not about learning how to hunt monsters. It's not about learning to arm ourselves with garlic and with crosses. This is a journey about understanding the lock on our own door. We are about to discover that what we call vampirism is not an attack. It is a game, a secret, a tragic, and a deeply addictive psychological game that requires at least 2 and often 3 players to function. It is a game that we have all, in our own wounded histories, learned to play with a masterful and an unconscious skill. And to understand this game, to finally see the invisible rules that have been governing our entire lives, we need a new map. We need to look at the brilliant and devastatingly simple diagram that the psychologist Stephen Karpman gave us nearly 60 years ago. He called it the Drama Triangle. To live a life where you feel constantly drained, to feel like you are the unwilling blood bank for the emotional needs of the world, is to live in a state of a quiet and a profound confusion. I know this state. I lived in it for decades. And in that confusion, the story I told myself was a simple one, a story of victims and of villains. I was the giver, they were the takers. I was good, they were selfish. This story felt true, and it was, in its own strange way, a deep and a comforting relief. It made me the hero of my own tragic opera. I was the martyr, the saint, the one who was suffering beautifully. But the great and inconvenient truth, the one that finally began to set me free, is that this story is a lie. It is a beautiful, a self-serving, and a deeply flawed lie. Because what if I told you that, in the complex and often unconscious drama of human connection, there are no pure victims? What if I told you that to be a victim is also, in itself, a form of power? This is the great and uncomfortable secret of our journey today. The energy drain that we feel is not an attack. It is a transaction. It is a complex and an unconscious trade. And to understand this trade, we need a map. In the 1960s, a psychologist named Stephen Karpman, who was a student of Eric Berne, the father of transactional analysis, gave us the simplest and the most powerful map for this dynamic ever created. He called it the Drama Triangle. Karpman's genius was to see that almost all of the dysfunctional, painful, and draining interactions in our lives are not random. They are a game with a strict set of rules and a cast of only 3 characters. And the energy drain is the price of admission for playing this game. Let us meet the players. The first and the most obvious is the one we have already met, the one our culture calls the villain or the vampire. This is the role of the persecutor. The persecutor's primary fuel is blame. Their entire stance towards the world is one of anger, of criticism, of judgment. It's all your fault, they say. You're not good enough. You always get it wrong. They maintain their sense of power and of control by making everyone else around them feel small and weak and wrong. This is the obvious vampire. This is the figure of the critical parent, the bullying boss, the demanding partner. The second role is the one that seems, on the surface, to be the good one. This is the rescuer. The rescuer is the helper. The strong friend, the one who is always there, the one who will drop everything to fix your problems. Their entire identity is built on being the one who helps. They seem to be the very opposite of the persecutor, but their true, unconscious motivation is often just as dark. The rescuer needs, on a deep and a profound level, for someone else to be less than them, so that they can be more than. They do not just offer help. They have a deep and a pathological need to be needed. And in their constant helping, they often and unconsciously rob the other person of their own power, of their own agency, of their own ability to grow. And this brings us to the third and the most crucial and the most misunderstood of all the roles. The role that so many of us who feel drained have perfected. It is the role of the victim. The victim in this drama is the one who feels poor me. They feel helpless, powerless, oppressed by the persecutors and in desperate need of the rescuers. Their entire stance towards the world is one of a beautiful and a tragic powerlessness. I can't. It's not my fault. Life is just too hard. Now, here is the genius of Karpman's model. These three roles are not separate people. They are a system. They are a closed and a self-perpetuating loop. A persecutor needs a victim to blame. A rescuer needs a victim to save. And a victim needs a persecutor to blame for their suffering, and a rescuer to save them from it. You cannot have one without the other two. And here is the final and most devastating of all the twists. The energy drain, the vampirism, is not just the persecutor feeding on the victim. That is a rookie-level analysis. The true and the profound drain is the game itself. It is the constant and the chaotic and the deeply addictive shifting of these roles, one to another. For in this drama, no one ever stays in their own starting role. The roles, in fact, are a lie, and they are a lie that is designed to cover up a much deeper and a much more painful truth. The victim, who feels so powerless, is, in fact, the most powerful and the most controlling of all the roles. They are the one who is secretly and unconsciously controlling the entire game, forcing the others to be either their jailer or their savior. And when the victim finally gets tired of being helpless, they will often make a sudden and a violent switch. They will become a persecutor. They will lash out with all their accumulated resentment at the very rescuer who has been failing to save them. The rescuer, in turn, when their help is finally rejected, or when they have given until they are in a state of a complete and a total burnout, will make the same switch. They too will become a persecutor. After all I've done for you, they will say, with a cold and a righteous fury, this is the thanks I get. And the persecutor, when they are finally confronted and held accountable for their own cruel behavior, will often, in an instant, collapse. They will, with a real and a pathetic and a self-pitying sorrow, become the victim. I am only this way, they will cry, because I was so deeply wounded myself. This is the sound of the triangle. It is the sound of the vampire drama. It is a merry-go-round of pain, a constant and a chaotic and an exhausting dance of blame and of self-pity. And it is the secret and often unseen script that is running almost every draining relationship in your entire life. And so we must return to our first and most important question. Why do we keep inviting the vampire in? The answer is a simple and a tragic one. We invite them in because we are, ourselves, standing on a corner of this same tragic triangle. We invite them in because we do not know how to have a relationship without this drama. It is the only game we know how to play. And the first step in leaving the game is to have the profound and the often humbling courage to ask, which corner of the triangle is my home? Let's meet the first and the most famous of the players. This is the one we all point to. This is the one we all recognize as the vampire. This is the role of the persecutor. The persecutor is the obvious vampire. Their entire strategy of connection, if you can even call it that, is one of control. Their fuel is blame. Their weapon is criticism. Their breath is the fire of judgment. The persecutor maintains their own fragile sense of self, their own feeling of being okay by making everyone else around them not okay. They need to be up by pushing everyone else down. We all know this person. In our lives, this is the figure of the critical parent, the one who never gave you an A for your successes, but always had a B for your failures. The one who, even now, can, with a single passive-aggressive comment, drain all the joy from your accomplishments. A promotion? That's nice. Just be careful you don't burn out. A new partner? He seems nice. For you. In the workplace, this is the bullying boss or the sarcastic colleague, the one who uses public criticism as a tool of power, who points out your smallest mistake in a group meeting. They drain you of your confidence, of your competence, of your very desire to try. They keep you in a constant, low-grade state of fear, a state of anxious hypervigilance, and in that fear, they control you. In our relationships, this is the abusive or controlling partner, the one who uses guilt or shame or threats to keep you in line. The one who, in a fight, doesn't attack the problem, but attacks you, your character, your past, your deepest insecurities. They are masters at finding the exact and most painful place to insert the knife. This is the classic vampire. They are loud, they are aggressive, and their method of feeding is simple. They drain you of your self-worth, of your safety, and of your peace. And if we are to be truly honest with ourselves, if we are to truly understand the nature of this game, we must admit that we have all, in our darkest moments, worn this mask. We have all put on the persecutor's armor when we have felt hurt or cornered or ashamed. It is the part of us that lashes out, the part that says a cruel thing to a lover in a moment of anger, the part that blames the world for a pain that is, in fact, our own. But here is the great and the tragic and the deeply human secret of the persecutor, a secret that, if we are to be compassionate philosophers, we must have the courage to see. The persecutor is not a monster. The persecutor is almost always a victim in disguise. The persecutor's entire aggressive and controlling performance is a tragic and a brilliant and a deeply wounded strategy. It is the strategy of a person who was, at some point in their past, so profoundly and so devastatingly made to feel powerless that they have sworn on an unconscious and a cellular level to never, ever feel that powerless again. Their cruelty is a preemptive strike. Their aggression is a shield. Their need to control the world around them is a desperate and a deeply traumatized attempt to manage the uncontrollable chaos that they feel on the inside. They are the former victim who has decided unconsciously that the only way to never be a victim again is to adopt the very armor of the person who hurt them. And this is the first and most important rule of the drama triangle. The roles are not stable. They are fluid, and the persecutor, for all their bluster and all their power, is perhaps the most fragile of all. Their entire identity is dependent on having a victim to blame. The moment the victim refuses to be afraid, the moment the victim refuses to be blamed, the persecutor's entire world collapses, and they are thrown, once again, back into the one role that they are so terrified of, the role of the victim. The persecutor, in the end, is not a creature of power. They are a creature of a profound and a terrifying dependency. They are perhaps the most pathetic and the most starving of all the vampires. If the persecutor is the obvious monster of our story, the one who feeds on our fear and our shame, then we must now turn to the second and far more insidious of the vampires, This one does not come to us with fangs and with claws. They come to us with a helping hand, with a compassionate ear, and with a beautiful and a reassuring and an all-consuming love. This is the subtle vampire. In the drama triangle, this is the role of the rescuer. And this, I must be honest, is the role that I, and perhaps you, have played with the most pride. It is the role of the strong friend. It is the role of the good child. It is the role of the savior. The rescuer is the person whose entire identity, whose entire sense of self-worth is built upon their profound and their seemingly selfless need to be needed. On the surface, they are the very opposite of the persecutor. Where the persecutor drains you by making you feel small, the rescuer drains you by making you feel incapable. Let us be very clear about this. The rescuer is not a person who helps. We all, in healthy relationships, help one another. A rescuer is a person who has a deep, a profound, and a pathological compulsion to help, even when their help is not wanted, and even when it is deeply and profoundly harmful. We all know this person. In our families, this is the martyr mother who does everything for her adult children. She pays their bills, she cleans their homes, she manages their lives, all under the beautiful and suffocating banner of love. She is not, in her conscious mind, a vampire. She is a saint. She is sacrificing her entire self for her children. But in the process, she is, with a terrible and a loving efficiency, draining them of the one thing they need to become adults, their own agency. She keeps them as helpless children so that she can, forever, remain the good and needed mother. In our friendships, this is the compulsive therapist, the friend who is drawn, like a moth to a flame, to a person who is in a state of chaos. They listen for hours. They give brilliant and unsolicited advice. They become the project manager for the other person's life. And they feel, in this process, a profound sense of a noble and a righteous purpose. But their help is not a free gift. It is a transaction. They are, in fact, unconsciously feeding on the other person's weakness, for it is only in the presence of another's weakness that they can feel their own heroic strength. The rescuer, in the end, is not a creature of love. They are a creature of a profound and a deeply hidden control. They are a vampire who drains you not of your blood, but of your autonomy. They keep you in a state of a grateful and a perpetual dependency, so that they can, forever, be the one who is in charge. And like the persecutor, we must look with a compassionate and an honest eye at the wound that lies beneath the mask. The rescuer is also a victim in disguise. The rescuer is almost always a person who grew up in a world of profound chaos, a world where they, as a small child, were forced to become the little adult. They were the child who had to, in order to survive, become the parent to their own chaotic or depressed parents. They learned, as a core and a life-saving belief, that their own needs were a problem and that their only value, their only path to a conditional and a fragile love was in their usefulness. And so, their entire adult life becomes a desperate and a compulsive repetition of this one tragic script. They do not know how to be in a relationship. They only know how to be useful in one. They are terrified of being on an equal footing with another person, for in a relationship of equals, they would have to be a person with their own messy and vulnerable needs. And that is a terrifying and an unfamiliar role. It is, they believe, far safer to be the savior. And this is the secret tragedy of the rescuer. They are the most profoundly lonely of all the roles. They are surrounded by people who need them, but they are never, ever truly known by anyone. They are a function, a tool, a beautiful and a competent and an endlessly giving machine. But they are not a person, and this is the root of the energy drain. The rescuer is not just draining the victim of their agency. The rescuer is, in fact, draining themselves. They are the vampire and the victim all at once. They are pouring their entire life force, their own precious and finite energy, into 1,000 different and ultimately fruitless projects in a desperate attempt to prove their own worth to a world that will never, ever be able to give them the one thing they truly crave. They are, in the end, a victim of their own compulsive and life-denying goodness. This is the most difficult part of our journey. It is, I must confess, the part of the map that I spent most of my life refusing to look at. Because it is so much easier, isn't it? It is so much simpler to point the finger, to cast the blame, to look at the persecutors in our lives, the critics, the bullies, and to say, "You are the vampire." It is even, in a more sophisticated way, easy to look at the rescuers, the martyrs, and to say, "You are the subtle vampire." But to truly understand the drama triangle, to understand why this terrible and draining game has been playing on a loop for your entire life, we must now have the courage to turn the mirror with a brutal and a compassionate honesty upon ourselves. We must, at last, talk about the victim. The victim in this great and tragic play is the one who feels poor me. They are the one who feels helpless, who feels powerless, who feels oppressed by the world, by the persecutors, and who is always and desperately in search of a rescuer. Their entire stance towards life is one of a beautiful, a sorrowful, and a profound powerlessness. I can't. It's not my fault. Life is just too hard for me. If only. And if you are a person who, like me, has spent a lifetime feeling drained by the vampires in your life, then this is, almost certainly, the role that you have chosen as your home. This is your corner of the triangle. And the great and central paradox of our entire exploration is this: the victim, who appears to be the most powerless of all the roles, is, in fact, the most powerful. The victim is the secret and unconscious director of the entire dramatic production. This is a terrible and a difficult truth to swallow. I know it is. It feels like a betrayal of our own suffering. But we must, if we are to be free, find the courage to look at it. The victim is the true center of the game. They are the sun around which the other two planets orbit. The persecutor needs a victim to blame in order to feel their own righteous anger. The rescuer needs a victim to save in order to feel their own heroic goodness. The entire game, the entire exhausting drama, is secretly and unconsciously orchestrated by the victim's seeming helplessness. But why? Why would anyone choose to be powerless? What is the secret and the terrible payoff for playing this role? The payoff is not a small one. It is a profound and an almost irresistible one. The first and most powerful payoff is that the victim gains a profound and unassailable and a beautiful moral superiority. This is the great and secret pleasure of the martyr. The person who is suffering is, in our cultural and our religious narratives, the good one. They are the saint. They are the one who is pure of heart. To be the victim is to be, in a strange and a twisted way, better than everyone else. Your pain becomes your proof of your own virtue. Your suffering becomes your identity. I lived in this role for years. I didn't have to be successful. I didn't have to be happy. I just had to be the one who was suffering more beautifully, more profoundly than anyone else. My pain was my badge of honor. The second great payoff is the avoidance of responsibility. This is the great existential gift that the victim role offers. If you are a victim, nothing is ever truly your fault. Life is a thing that happens to you. The persecutor is the reason you have failed. The rescuer is the reason you have not healed. You are, in the Sartrean sense that we have explored, freed from the terrifying and dizzying burden of your own radical freedom. To be a victim is to be, in a sense, a child forever. It is to never have to take true and adult and accountable ownership of your own life, of your own choices, of your own power. And the third payoff, the one that fuels the resentment engine we have spoken of, is that the victim has the right to be angry. They have the right to complain, to criticize, to feel a constant, low-grade and righteous resentment at the unfairness of the world. The victim is, in fact, often a persecutor in disguise. They are just a persecutor who is punching up. And so, we see the full and terrible nature of the game. We, who have felt so drained our entire lives, have not been the unwilling blood bank for the vampires. We have been the host of the banquet. We have been unconsciously sending out invitations. Come, you who are critical, you who are needy, and feed upon me. For in my own beautiful and tragic suffering, I find my identity, I find my innocence, and I find my power. This is the great and tragic irony. You are not a victim of the vampire. You are, in a very real sense, a vampire who feeds on your own suffering. And this is the final, and the most important, and the most devastating of all the rules of the drama triangle. The roles are a lie. They are a fluid, a chaotic, and a desperate dance of a shared and an unhealed trauma. The persecutor, as we have seen, is just a victim who has put on armor. The rescuer is just a victim who is trying to heal others instead of themselves. And the victim is just a persecutor who is waiting for their moment to strike, or a rescuer who is waiting for a project to save them from themselves. This is the merry-go-round. This is the hell of our own codependent relationships. And you are, as long as you are on this triangle, in a constant and a dizzying state of switching roles, a state of a profound and an exhausting instability. And so we must return to our original and our most important myth. The vampire is not the monster at the door. The vampire is the game. The vampire is the triangle itself. And the reason you have been drained your entire life, the reason you are so tired, is because you have been a willing and an often eager player in this game. And here, in this profound and this uncomfortable and this deeply liberating realization, we finally, at long last, find the key. We finally find the one and the only way to truly and forever break the curse, to see the game. That is the first and the most important and the most difficult of all the steps. To see with a clear and an unflinching and a compassionate eye the invisible and tragic choreography that has been dictating your entire life. To see that your goodness as a rescuer was a form of control, and that your helplessness as a victim was a form of power. To see that your entire relational life has been a chaotic and an exhausting and a deeply addictive merry-go-round of these three tragic and wounded roles. To see the drama triangle is to have your entire world, your entire story of yourself shattered. And in the quiet and the disorienting and the often terrifying space that follows this shattering, a new and a simple and a life-altering question arises. How do I stop playing? For years, I believed that the answer was to play the game better. I thought I had to become a better rescuer, a smarter victim, a stronger persecutor. But the great and final secret of the drama triangle is this: you cannot win this game. The game is designed to be unwinnable. It is a loop of perpetual and self-sustaining misery. The only way to win is to stop playing. It is to have the profound, the terrifying, and the revolutionary courage to step off the triangle entirely. This is not a simple or an easy act. It is, perhaps, the most difficult and the most courageous work of a human life, for it requires you to do the one thing that your entire and deeply wounded survival system has been designed to avoid at all costs. It requires you to take radical responsibility for your own inner world. It is the journey of becoming what the philosophers would call a sovereign self. So what does this look like in the real and messy and often difficult world of our daily lives? The first and most important act is to refuse the payoff. You must, with a new and a conscious and a deliberate will, begin to starve the part of you that has been feeding on the drama. If your home on the triangle is the rescuer, you must learn to give up the beautiful and intoxicating drug of being needed. You must learn to sit with the discomfort of not fixing someone else's pain. You must, in short, learn to let the people you love fail. You must learn to trust that they have the capacity to manage their own lives, and that your help may have been the very thing that was keeping them weak. You must learn to stop being a savior and to start simply being a supporter, a person who can listen and can hold space without taking over. If your home is the persecutor, you must learn to give up the hot and the powerful drug of being right. You must learn to sit with your own uncomfortable feelings, your anger, your fear, your sadness, without immediately and unconsciously exporting them onto someone else in the form of blame. You must learn to take ownership of your own inner state and to accept that your feelings are your responsibility and your responsibility alone. And if your home, like it was for me for so long, is the victim, this is the hardest work of all. You must be willing to give up the most subtle, the most powerful, and the most deeply addictive of all psychological drugs, the drug of moral superiority. You must be willing to let go of the secret and tragic identity of the one who is suffering. You must be willing to give up the right to complain, the right to be innocent, the right to be blameless. You must, in short, be willing to trade the beautiful and familiar and tragic role of the martyr for the difficult, the unglamorous, and the profoundly powerful role of the adult. And this, as our great existential guides like Sartre would tell us, is the true meaning of freedom. It is the act of taking full and total and unblaming responsibility for your own life, for your own choices, for your own happiness. It is the act of becoming the author of your own story, not just a character in someone else's. And the great and practical tool for this revolution, the tool that you use to dismantle the triangle, piece by piece, is the art of the clean no, the art of the sacred boundary. The drama triangle can only exist in a world without boundaries. It thrives in the murky, the chaotic, and the fused waters of codependency, a world where no one knows where they end and the other person begins. And a clean, a firm, and a loving boundary is like a single, sharp, and clarifying blast of sunlight into this dark and foggy world. When the persecutor comes to you and says, "This is all your fault," you no longer engage in the game. You do not become a victim. "You're right, I'm sorry." You do not become a counter-persecutor. "No, it's your fault." You simply hold the line. You create a boundary. "I am not willing to be spoken to in that way." When the victim comes to you with their familiar and endless and unsolvable problem, you no longer engage in the game. You do not become a rescuer. "Here, let me fix it for you." You do not become a persecutor. You are always complaining. You simply hold the line. You create a boundary. I care about you, and I can hear that you are in a lot of pain, but I am not able to fix this for you. This is the great work. It is the work of moving from a life of reaction to a life of intention. And now we can finally return to our original and our most important myth. The vampire, we were told, cannot enter your home unless you invite him in. We have spent this entire journey exploring the deep, the tragic, and the often unconscious reasons why we have been sending that invitation. We have been sending it because we, too, were starving. We were starving for a sense of power, or for a sense of purpose, or for a sense of a moral identity. We were, in our own tragic and wounded way, just as hungry as the monster at the door. The great and final cure, the act that stops the energy drain forever, is not to learn how to fight the vampires. It is to learn how to feed yourself. It is the slow, the patient, and the sacred work of self-parenting, of self-mirroring, of becoming your own, an unfailing source of validation, of safety, and of love. It is the work of filling your own cup so that you no longer need to enter into these toxic and draining transactions to get a single, unsatisfying drop. And when you do this, when you finally learn to inhabit your own sovereign and well-fed self, a strange and a beautiful magic happens. The vampires disappear, not because you have slain them, but because they can no longer find a foothold in your world. The persecutor's blame can find no victim to stick to. The rescuer's help can find no victim to save. And the victim's silent plea for a rescuer is no longer being broadcast from your soul. You have not killed the monster. You have simply and finally, and with a profound and a beautiful and a quiet love for yourself, revoked the invitation. You have, at long last, closed the door. And in the new and sacred silence of your own inner home, you are, for the very first time, safe and whole and free.